Welcome to the Chat with Chou podcast, hosted by Chou Allegra, well-being and belonging consultant, best-selling author, and sought-after speaker. Join Chou as she connects with both new and familiar faces, showcasing their inspiring work and businesses. Together, we will explore insightful conversations, practical tips, and valuable resources aimed at fostering individual and collective growth, both personally and professionally. Let's embark on this journey towards greater well-being and belonging together. Alrighty, welcome everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another conversation with some of my favorite people, new and old friends. And today I have Barb with me. Barb, do you mind just jumping in and letting us know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Barb Zablotney, and I have a disability. I have a spinal cord injury due to a motor vehicle accident when I was 21 in 2007. I hit a patch of black ice, lost control of my vehicle, and I was paralyzed on impact due to not wearing a seatbelt. So please wear your seatbelt, everyone.
Yes.
Learn from my mistakes. But yeah, so I've been paralyzed going on 17 years, and living life in a manual wheelchair as a non-ambulatory wheelchair user. Not even a year after my injury, my mom died suddenly in her sleep. So I was 22, and she was kind of my main caregiver at the time. At that point, I really spiraled into a really dark depression. And it took me about a decade to get myself out of this depression. And that was a pretty hard time. And the turning point came whenever I, one, started to accept my disability, but two, also to not have that false hope that I'm going to walk again and, just kind of be like, this is it. So I have to make the most out of what I do have. And the opportunity to compete for Miss Wheelchair Pennsylvania came up, and I decided to compete, and I won. And I was Miss Wheelchair Pennsylvania 2018. I traveled to and through 7 different states for 20,000 miles for 68 appearances. And that was kind of how I got into everything that I'm currently doing. It was kind of a snowball effect from there, if you will, because I did my job well as Miss Wheelchair. So I did so much networking during that time frame. And I was able to make so many different connections. And one of those connections was when I was at an Abilities Expo. I got in contact with the college. That's my alma mater now. And I realized that they had a disability studies program, and I had no idea what disability studies is. I was like, wait, what? And once I looked it up, I was like, this sounds like it's right up my alley. And it's pretty much a humanities kind of thing. And I ended up graduating with that. And I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in disability studies as well. And that's kind of what I'm up to right now. I've been spending a lot of time on that. And I also do a lot of community advocacy as well, and I sit on various boards for different disability organizations as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, one, for all that you do, and two, for being here, making the time, to do this. I know,
Of course.
time is a luxury for all of us, but you are doing a lot of great work in the community and making time, to do this. I'm grateful for that. And I wanted to kind of take a little segue here with what you shared earlier. You said when you started accepting your disability, then pretty much the rest became history, right? Then it sounds like it was that the pivoting point maybe that led to you doing all the advocacy you're doing now. Like you say, like acceptance was kind of the pivotal moment or not? Like, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Just wanted to kind of touch base on that.
I would say that it was a pivotal point because I was so consumed with this idea of false hope. And I was so
Mhm.
consumed with this idea that there was going to be a cure and I'm going to walk again. And, why learn how to do all this stuff whenever I'm going to walk again one day? And I was just so consumed with that. And really, it was when I realized that it's almost a decade, Barb, and you're still not walking. And if there is a cure, you're probably not going to walk anytime soon. So you got to do something. And that was kind of when I accepted that I'm probably not going to walk in my life. And that's okay. And that is completely okay. And while it would be wonderful if I could even just stand for 3 seconds to pull up my pants or do a stand and pivot transfer and make my life infinitely much easier, that is not the circumstances of my situation. So it was in that acceptance of that I really realized that, okay, this is it. And then the furthering of that was when I went for Miss Wheelchair Pennsylvania. I
Mhm.
started to, when I went to nationals, I met these women that were so accomplished and they were so driven, and they didn't even really recognize their disability. They were going
Mhm.
and they were rock stars where they're from. And that was really eye-opening to me because I spent a decade not talking to any other disabled people. So when I
Mhm.
won Miss Wheelchair Pennsylvania, that was the first time I started interfacing with other disabled people. And that was really eye-opening to me. And I went into it going, I don't know anything. Teach me everything, because
Yes.
all I knew was my story and my situation, and not everyone's situation is like mine. And I wanted to
Mhm.
learn those stories as Miss Wheelchair Pennsylvania, because when I'm advocating, yeah, I can advocate for myself, but I can't call myself a disability advocate if all I'm doing is advocating for myself. That would be a
Mhm.
self advocate then, which is great. Be a self advocate.
Yeah.
I
Right.
strongly suggest that. But, to call myself a disability advocate, I had to take that a step further by listening to
Mhm.
other people's stories, hearing what they are, their struggles are that may not be my struggles, and understanding what they think the solutions can be. And when the
Mhm.
time and place is right to go and tell future stakeholders that these are the problems and these are solutions I've heard from the community. And I think that was kind of the turning point, is when I realized that there's all these systemic issues. And I started to learn my rights more in this process as well. I always saw life through the medical model of disability lens and just figured, oh, this is just the way it is. I just can't do that. In reality, there's laws designed so I can access places, and it's those
Right.
places that are disabling me and not allowing me to participate, that I had to reframe how I viewed the world. And I
Mhm.
think that was ultimately the driving force of everything. And that's when
Mhm.
I focused everything into advocacy, because I always knew I'm a very strong self advocate.
Mhm.
I'm very confident in my self advocacy skills. And I wanted to know, how can I use those strong self advocacy skills to go and help others?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And you bring up a good point there, how sometimes not just with disability, but both of us are both disabled women here, but women outside of disability, what I often see in just all humans is the fact that we're always waiting for that next thing, right? The next job, the next house, the next car, the next relationship to live a full life, where sometimes it will be there. Maybe it's going to be there 10, 15 years. Maybe we're not going to get there yet. And then we miss out on the here and now, right? We miss to enjoying the present life. I'm not saying it's always easy. You and I were just talking,
Mhm.
before we got on air here about all the other things that we deal with, living in the same community and dealing with issue barriers in healthcare for those of us with disabilities. And so it's not always, roses per se, but it's like when we start embracing the here and now, while we're still aiming for something bigger and better, I think that's when we start actually enjoying life more, right? That we're not, feeling or joy per se. Like the things we're going through might be, challenging, yes, but we're not, depriving ourselves from what life could be if we actually embrace what's happening here and still work on those goals. And some people exist. Some people are able to regain strength and then things, change. I've been there years ago, and then now it's a whole different situation as well, right? And so challenges are a lot. There's no galore, if you want, even, with with being, woman with disability, going to school. And even you mentioned just losing your mom like a year after your accident, where she was like, your main caregiver. That is huge. Are there other
Mhm.
challenges that you faced along the way, and what keeps you going when you face those challenges?
Uh, I have faced tons of challenges,
I'm
and
sure.
you really hit on things with what you said there. That was a really great recap. I think those challenges are essentially what mold us into being what we're meant to be. And
Mhm.
I think we can either allow them to cause us to shrivel up in a ball and not do anything, or it can give us the motivation to go and fight. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm an 8 on the
Mhm.
Enneagram, so I have
Mhm.
a nonstop energy to fight in me. So I kind of feel like my personality was kind of always built for this in a way. And while some people tell me that they get fatigued with the fight, while I get annoyed, I would say I'm willing to always like, I'm willing to fight for whatever, especially if I know that it's what's happening is wrong. And I think
Mhm.
that's where if I'm dealing with something, I know that it has to be 10 times worse for
Mhm.
others who have different intersectional identities than myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people just start to feel hopeless quickly. And instead of
Mhm.
feeling hopeless, we have to channel those feelings into going and figuring out where is the root cause of these issues. Because if we can all come together and address these root issues, things can change, and they will change, and they
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
changed over the years. But we also
Mhm.
have to remember change does take time. We do live in a democracy, thankfully, and
Mhm.
that takes time. And I think a lot of people want change now, but it takes all of us fighting and putting our stories together. And we need to find that common thread through our
Mhm.
stories to
Mhm.
understand what the root cause of everything is. And I think that's a really good point you made, and I really appreciate that. And I
Mhm.
all the challenges I've gone through, we don't have time to go through them all, sweetheart. we we're
Yeah.
gonna be here all day. But
Yeah.
what I use to get through those is just understanding that this is a much larger issue than myself. And
Yes, it's bigger
what
than us.
I
Yeah.
do what I do is helping to pave a path for others. And it's
Mhm.
funny because I see it actually happening real time. And
Yes.
I'm kind of like, this is interesting because the people don't necessarily understand that struggle that I went through originally, that fought for their experience to maybe be better.
Mhm.
And they just kind of take it for granted. And sometimes that can irritate you, but at the same time, well, at least the struggles I went through, while it sucked that I had to go through that, it has paved the way for someone else to have a better experience. And that's kind of what you have
Mhm.
to focus on, because you can't really be thinking it's all about me, me, me. It's about
Mhm.
them in all actuality.
Yeah, yeah, nicely said. So it's kind of back to what you were saying earlier, going from a self-advocate to a, advocate with capital A, right? Just advocating for, like, in your case, for a disability advocate for everyone with a disability. And I've seen you do that so well, and I don't think I even mentioned this to you. So for those who are listening, I recently moved to Johnston, well, it's only a year now, and I so recently, actually, then maybe month or maybe 2 months by now, as the time we're recording this, I went downtown, Barb, and then I was downtown someplace, I guess nights called Made in Johnstown, where on the wall, it was all the things about downtown Johnstown. Actually, that was the first time I think that I actually was out of the car, kind of and figure out if you're enjoying downtown. So I was Made in Johnstown and saw on the wall, and there was everything about downtown, the structure and everything. And there was your face. And then I'm I'm like, I know this lady. She's here making it happen. Right? Talking about accessibility in downtown Johnstown. I was able
Yeah.
to, get wheeled around because someone like you paved the way. And I don't even know what it looked like before because I've only been here for a year, but obviously it was not as successful as it is today. And even now, there's still things that could be better.
Oh
So
yeah.
thank you for, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, right? So I just want to share that to say like, yes, I've seen that in real life, real time, that you are doing that, taking those challenges and now making it, quote unquote, my problem, but it's our problem, right? How do I pave that? Like how you can pave the way so that it makes a difference for someone else, afterwards. So thank you again. Thank you for all of that. I'm
I
enjoying,
appreciate
my family's enjoying a lot of Johnstown because of the work you've done. So very
I
grateful for that.
I appreciate that it's noticed for sure. And there's still so much more going on. We were able to get some of the curb cuts, fixed. There was a couple things that were kind of prohibiting people from freely moving on the sidewalks 5 years ago. And I actually have a YouTube video that kind of showcases this activity I did with the stakeholders when I was in this wheelchair. And you can see how it once was and the struggle that we all went through. But what's awesome is that Johnstown was rewarded a raise grant, which is a huge grant to help redo the infrastructure of transportation and help prepare us for climate change and the raising temperature. And the problem that we find is that there is not really much discussion on the intersectionality of climate change and climate justice issues and
Mm,
disability, because disability advocates are not necessarily seeing eye to eye with the climate
mm,
change people because of the whole plastic debate, because plastic
mm,
is what keeps disabled people alive. You hear
mm,
about the straw bans, you hear about plastic bans, and these things are what keep us alive. And so it shuts down disabled advocates. Like,
mm,
they just don't want to deal with it. They're like, you
mm,
do not want to listen to us or understand us. We don't want to deal with it. But what happens with that is we are not being taken into consideration when these cities are being remodeled with these grants. And
mm,
I was very grateful to be able to do an activity with the planner who is helping to do the design work of Johnstown for this
mm.
raise grant. They're redoing Main Street and Central Park, and they
Wow,
wanted universal design to be a main component.
beautiful.
But the
Mhm,
problem was that Johnstown didn't have the funds for universal design. I was like, so don't be promising universal design if you cannot afford it. Just
mm,
a little bit better than ADA would be okay.
yeah.
So I was able to help them to understand why a lot of the suggestions that people have recommended would be really good. A lot of things, like for instance, California building code standard on-street parking is different than Pennsylvania's, so they've been talking about implementing the California building code standard for on-street parking on Main Street for accessibility. And they also want to make sure the curb cut ramp slopes are not where they are now, which they are in ADA design standards, but the ADA design standard is still hard to will up. And
I was
so
gonna say
they
we
want
all
to
know
make,
ADA does not cut it, right? No pun
yes, and
intended.
they understood that, and they understood the assignment, and so they have been trying to make it work at, like, say, a 5% slope in the curb cut rather than that. And so the designer has really thought hard about it. And my main concern was about all these trees they wanted to put along the sidewalks, because the
Mm,
tree roots are going to do what tree roots do and push up those sidewalks over the next decade or so. And then
right.
that's going to create barriers, not just for us, but I mean,
Everyone.
liability for people tripping and whatnot. And so that's where my concern kind of laid, was with all these trees they want to put everywhere. And I got educated about how now, when they put in full grown trees, how there is a whole entire rooting system an intricate thing to prevent the roots from going up on sidewalks now. And I thought that was a
Wow.
really cool thing to learn. So,
Nice.
it's still, I was able to accomplish stuff, but there's still work to do. And if you can get it ahead of time, if people who are listening, if you hear about your city or town doing remodels and stuff, reach out to them and ask who's
Mhm.
designing this, what's going on, and ask if you can give input. Because
Yeah.
if you can get it before it's already built, then you have a
Mhm.
chance of
Mhm.
actually having it transform to be more accessible for everyone. And I think that's super amazing. And more people have to take that initiative to reach out and be that squeaky wheel, to be
Yeah.
heard, to be able to get the voice on the table, and to sit at that table to help them figure out solutions moving forward in the design process.
Yeah, 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 well said. And then speaking of growing trees, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been growing through this entire experience, right? From 17 years ago, even just 10 years ago to,
Mhm.
maybe what, 8 years ago. I can't do math since you crowned Miss Wheelchair
Six,
PA.
six,
So
6 years.
6 years. See, I'm bad at math. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but will you say that you've been growing both personally and professionally through all of this? And if so, what are some of your favorite strategies for personal and professional growth?
Yeah, I think I really grew both personally and professionally. The first thing was when I was crowned, I was like, I don't own any professional clothes. And I tend to swear a little bit when I'm talking. So I had to learn how to curb my my tongue and speak more professionally. And I had to come up with a wardrobe that was more professional as well. And that was actually kind of a big shock to me. I was like, I don't want to dress plain. And so it was something I had to kind of get past. And I think that was a big growth part too. And once I got past those things, I was able then to start getting more involved in different boards, because when you get involved with different nonprofit boards, you learn about different disabilities, you learn about different aspects of different realms of care. You kind of expand your knowledge. And your first couple meetings, you're probably going to be really confused. But by a year or so in, you start to kind of understand everything, and you realize how much you're actually taking in and how much you are learning in the process. And I think that's kind of where I really grew from. And my strategy is honestly talking to other people and reaching out to the people in these leadership positions and talking to
Mhm.
them and learning from them. Because if you see someone and you're like, wow, they're really impressive. They say that you are a combination of the 5 people you surround yourself around every day. So if
Mhm.
you are really impressed by someone, if you surround yourself by those people that you're impressed by, you will eventually be able to pick up those traits of them. And that is something that I have tried my best to do, is to surround myself with positive people. And those that are not positive, or those that are hindering what I feel is my growth and suppressing me, I try to distance myself then. And I'm not mean or anything. I'm not, I just try to distance myself from them
Yeah,
because
healthy
I know
boundaries are
it's not
important.
good. Exactly. And I think that's something that as women, we have a hard time in general setting boundaries, because
Mhm.
we're told to always be nice, always be polite, and you feel like when you set those boundaries, you're not being polite anymore. But really,
Mhm.
you're being polite to yourself. And that's the most important thing, is to love yourself first and foremost. When someone asks you, who do you love the most? You really should be saying yourself, because once you love yourself, then you can love everyone else infinitely.
Yeah, nicely said. And I think earlier you also mentioned I was kind of connecting what you said now and what you said earlier. When you started in your role, as Miss Wheelchair PA, and you were able to see other women who who were also disabled and just, making it happen, right? Like you even say, like they even recognize the disability, just kept going. So seeing other people who you can relate to, but then who are thriving to, or striving to do, beyond what people expected of them, kind of also was an inspiration for you. And I see now you're doing the same. I think even what you said about calling people in leadership and being on different boards, as much as you're going to learn, I've also heard stories already of how you've been impacting the places that you enter. I was actually talking with somebody else who, you probably know her. I've not mentioned her name here, but who is a yoga teacher. And then she's like, "Oh, you should connect with so and so." I'm like, "Barb, I know Barb." I'm like, "Yeah, we're friends already, but thank you." So people know of you there because they see the work you do, the places the spaces that you're entering, you are making impact. So not only, you're learning from them, but people are learning from you as well. And I think that's how we all grow. That's
Exactly.
definitely a great growth strategy, for all of us. So thanks for sharing that.
Of
And we
course.
talked a
Of
little bit
course.
about, yeah, we talked a little about a lot, I should say, about, disability, and, you paving the way for many others behind you, and you continue to do so. If someone's to ask you, how can people with disabilities be best supported in their communities? What would be your answer? I know it's a
I
it's a it's
think,
a it's a
yeah,
lot that could be good, that could be done.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very complex question because if we're talking about other disabled people supporting other disabled people, there is an issue with disability hierarchy within
Hierarchy.
disability culture and a lot of
Mhm.
lateral ableism as well happening.
Yes.
And I think understanding, so I preach this to in my workshops I do, is to
Mm-hmm.
understand your own able privileges is a way that you can best move forward. And so while I am disabled, I still have a lot of able privileges. I have my hands, I have my arms, I have my voice, I have my breathing, I have my sight, I have my hearing. I still have a lot of able privileges happening. And
Mm-hmm.
so I need to recognize that. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to use those things to help center people with less able privileges because
Mm-hmm.
that's the main goal, because they are the ones that are most oppressed. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that really gets lost within the community itself. So I think
Yeah.
people who are within the community, one, recognize the able privileges you have. And if you know other disabled people that may not have those able privileges, do your best to center them and to empower them because
Mm-hmm.
chances are what they are dealing with, you may be dealing with also, but it's probably going to affect them 10 times worse because of them having less able privileges. And when things are right and accessible and working for them, it's going to trickle down to everyone else. So I think that is the main thing there within the community. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about the able-bodied world, which is a bigger population, the way I think that they can support disabled people is one, listening to us, bringing our voices to the table, but also don't just assume you know better for us. Please find experts that are actual experts to bring you information about before building a business or a town or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't tell you how many times I've gone into businesses that are new and they're like, oh, I'll talk to my architect. Meanwhile, I've had architects tell me, yeah, we're not taught about ADA anything. So they are not
Right.
the experts in that realm. You need to actually
Mm-hmm.
find an ADA coordinator who has certifications and is an expert in this realm.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of them available through the ADA centers across America. There's various ADA centers across America, and you can
Right.
contact them and they will give you someone that will help you through that process. And I think that's the best thing for people to do, because when you are excluding us through architectural barriers, that creates the social stigmas that we then internalize and deal with. So I think that is one of the root causes. But also, you don't want to assume incompetency You want to assume competency as well when you're dealing with disabled people. So that's another thing I think the able-bodied world can really help disabled people by.
Definitely. Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, that brings us to my next question. How can we support you? People listening, people, who know you, people who might, hear of this later on. How can we support you?
If you need anyone to speak or do presentations about disability studies in various aspects, I'm here for hire. So I'm available.
Yes.
You can contact me through social media, my email, whatever. That's how you could support me best, I feel like. Other than that, just treat disabled people with respect and don't talk down to them. Don't talk to them like they're babies. Just talk to them like you would another person. And before you do anything with them, pause for 5 seconds and go, if this person was able bodied, would I ask them if they needed help with this task? Would I ask them if they needed XYZ? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't, then just say, hi, how are you doing today? And now you made yourself a friendly face for the
There you
person
go.
to possibly ask you for help on their own, because
Mm-hmm.
you're now just assuming they can't do it when you just automatically ask if they need help. So
Right.
just being nice like you would anyone else and saying, hey, how are you doing today? The weather's really rainy and crappy out, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Now I find that you're a friendly face and I'm going to ask
Mm-hmm.
you if I need help potentially. So I think that's the best way too.
Yeah, and that relates to what you said earlier about presuming competence, right? So if I
Mhm.
presume that someone can do for themselves as much as they can, and they're also then capable of asking for help, then I take a step back and not, gotta insert myself as like, I'm all powerful, savior here to rescue from all your challenges.
Yep. Yep.
And people
Yep.
don't realize, able bodied, like sometimes we don't realize that that's how it comes across to the rest of us who are just minding our own business, right? I don't need someone to just because you see me sitting there, come push my chair. No, would you want me to come just put my hand on your shoulder? If I could, they'll feel awkward, right? But if you see someone in a wheelchair, you think, well, they must need help. Then you stop pushing the wheelchair before talking to them. No, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks, right? And it
I've
can go
had
on and on about these
people
things.
I'm sitting at my car, like, just I got a text message, for instance, and I'm
They're probably
replying to the
surprised that you
text
actually
message.
drive. Let's just start there, my friend, right?
Yeah,
People see
yeah,
like she's in a wheelchair, she's driving. What's happened here, right?
I'm sitting there with my door open and I'm replying to a text message and I have people coming up, "Do you need help?" And I'm like, "With what?" And they're like, "I don't know, it looked like you needed help." I'm like, "Why? I'm sitting here on my phone." Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah. Would you do that
people."
to anybody sitting in the phone, right? Just because we see in your phone, we
Especially
see you have a wheelchair, they will assume that you need help, right? It's
especially a
okay to help when
woman
you need it. Mm-hmm.
especially a woman in a parking lot. I think people tend to, like, because people tend to assume asexuality with
Mm-hmm.
disability, and therefore they don't really necessarily realize we're women in a parking lot.
And
And
you
when
approaching me already makes me uncomfortable, right?
yes, and you're coming close to my personal space in a parking lot,
Yeah.
and you are a man, and you're saying you want to help me, but how do I know you actually want to help me? Like, can you back away? And if I needed help, I'd
Right.
ask. Like, I would have brought someone with me. I don't want some stranger, because how do I know you don't have ill intentions? I'm still a woman
Right.
fearful in a parking lot. So I think that's another thing, is I just want people to understand that, we are still women also, and
Mhm.
we are still fearful of being preyed upon as well. So if we are maybe a little attitudey with you, if you ask us if we need help in a parking lot, that's why.
Yeah. Sometimes it's almost that self-defense, right? And without even, saying it, it's like anybody will try to do what they can to when you feel unsafe to try to protect yourself, whether it's verbally or removing yourself physically if you can. And so things to keep in mind, because sometimes people have good intentions, but the way we go
Exactly.
about it is not always supportive, right? The way we go about it
Exactly.
sometimes makes other people feel like they're in danger or feel uncomfortable, or feel like you said, like talk on talk down, or or seen as they're not capable of doing, X, Y, and Z. So it's
Yep.
okay to, to make yourself available, to be that friendly voice, like you said, friendly face, and then, allow people to reach out when and, if they want to. Some of us, like, there's
Exactly.
times where I want to struggle. I want a good struggle to pull myself, out of bed, or, or transfer into my city,
We
what if I can, right? Because
and we
that's the one
worked
thing I can do for myself.
and we
Exactly.
worked
Go for it.
hard for that independence as well. And so
There
if
you
that's what we
go.
can do
There you
ourselves,
go.
that's what we want to
Yeah.
do.
Yes. And I think that's the key there. Helping is not
And
bad, but if you helping takes away our independence, that makes us feel less than when society already makes that, broadcast that message.
And just because it looks different doesn't make it that we're doing it wrong either. We're just doing it
Yeah.
differently than everyone else of how we get in and out of a vehicle. You may think it's a
Right.
struggle and you may be perceiving it's a struggle, but I'm not perceiving it as a struggle and I'm just
Yeah.
trucking along because it's just
This
second
is what I
nature to me
do.
now.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
As we say, talk with my OT, that we just had this jokes like, this is how you do it. I'm like, this is how I make it work. When my body's too weak, I can't even manage my transport board. I'm gonna scoot until I get to the seat or plop on the floor. Who cares? At my own house, right? I'm fine on the floor. So it might look like, oh my goodness, she's being injured. No, I'm fine. Clearly it's not so gracefully plopping on the floor, like I often say. But and it's okay. I'm
It
okay with
works.
that.
It
It works.
works.
Yeah, it works. It's just fine. Yeah. So yeah. So thank you so much for sharing all that you shared today. Like I am, my heart is full just getting to know you better and talk more with you, and be able to have you on this platform. So again, we can bring more awareness, right? So that all of us can make do even one little thing, one little change, so that the communities ourselves, even to begin with ourselves, we're more inclusive and more supportive of all people, and including people with disabilities. So you did mention the way to support you is to, hire you for speaking engagements, a talk, workshop. And you mentioned we can reach out to you, maybe email or social media. Do you mind sharing what those
Yep.
contacts are? And we'll make sure we put it in the notes as well.
Of course. So my Instagram is the Rolling Rainbow altogether. I am
Perfect.
also on YouTube at Rolling Rainbow Barb. And I also have a Facebook page, Rolling Rainbow Barb, as well. My email is barbzablotney@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. And I encourage everyone, go follow. We'll put in a note so you can
Thank,
just click it and go there and follow her. Thank you so much, Barb.
thank you so much
And
for
for
having
all of
me and inviting me.
definitely. For everyone listening or watching, go and make this a great day for you and for those around you.
It's doing fireworks. Cool.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chat with Chou podcast. We hope today's episode inspired and informed you on your journey towards growth. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow Chou Allegra on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and more resources. Until next time, take care and keep striving for well-being and belonging in all areas of your life.